going to be utilizing AHA Slides as a tool for some interaction. So a different way to kind of mix things up a bit. And you can use the QR code that you'll see there on the left-hand side of the screen. You should be seeing that, along with a link to the website. So ahaslides.com, and then you see the little code there that you can join through a website as well if you're like me and you have 20 screens up at one time. So if that's easier for you, or you can use your phone. Charlie is going to drop, she did put that self-care assessment in. I have a link to that as well later on. And we may be able to get to that, but we're going to use AHA Slides. Maybe, let me see if I can get it. There we go. All right, a little bit about me. I I think I have a little addiction to education, which is probably fine considering the other things you could be addicted to. So yeah, a lot of people are like, yeah, all the degrees in the wall. Yes, I have a lot. I've paid a lot for that paper. But I love to learn. And so that is the first thing, is that I am a lifelong learner. I do have I have 2 master's degrees, one in communication and one in education. And then, oh yeah, I am a professor at Ivy Tech full time. And I do work there as an assistant vice president of talent and professional development as well. So this little slide, some pictures there. I do a lot of presentations. I live in the Cincinnati area. That's my family. That's my larger family when we met up in Cabo after the pandemic for the first time to see my Australian relatives. So that was really awesome. I also teach Pilates Reformer just for fun, mostly on Saturdays. And then my family as well really is my guide. So when I think about self-care for myself and what we're going to talk about this evening, a lot of that has to do with me being present for my family. In fact, my youngest son, we have one left in the house. So we have 16, 21, and 24. My oldest turned 24 last week. And our 16-year-old is on fall break. And today he needed me to run him around because he just has his temps. And I was doing that while I was doing meetings in my car. So the multitasking is a very real thing sometimes. But that is my self-care, to be able to be there for my family. So question for you. This is a poll question. You should see this in AHA Slides. Curious about how often you feel like this image. And so, whatever that means to you, how often do you feel that in your life? So you can just participate here in the poll. We're going to see that change live. I think this is really fun. I like to watch. I started watching Dancing with the Stars again this season because for me, that is my own little bit of self-care as well. Just doing something meaningless. And I wish they had polls like this when you were watching, when they're like, vote now. I wish you could see the actual votes. So this is kind of fun. And yeah, you can definitely participate in the Zoom chat as well. I'll keep an eye on that as we go along also. So yeah, by the end of the day, yes, exhausted, overwhelmed daily. We're going to talk about some of that overwhelmed feeling for sure. So we're kind of in the middle there on an average, which I think is good news. Gosh, it's almost like a nice little bell curve there. But those of you that said 1, we really need you to weigh in on what you're doing, right? That'll be very helpful. So please don't feel like, oh gosh, you have this down and you're not going to get anything out of it, because I think it's a daily choice to keep ourselves on the lower side of this poll. So let's see how we can do that. One, as Charlie mentioned, I'm an educator. I have to share resources. I feel like it's like just not, it's just not right if I don't share where I get a lot of my information from. So here are a few things I would highly encourage you to dig into if you want a little bit more after this. So Onward, which is all about cultivating emotional resilience in educators, which is huge. And there's a workbook. There's actually a whole class you can do on that resource. Also Well-Being, which is from Gallup, and that I'll reference that just to kind of think about how we think of ourselves as a full person when we think of self-care and the different aspects of our whole being. I love this one, 180 Days of Self-Care for Busy Educators, because it's just so absolutely focused on those in the classroom. So if you want a very practical guidebook, that would be the number one that I would reference. We use that for our faculty at Ivy Tech. And let's see, then A Moment for Teachers, Self-Care for Busy Teachers. So just another great tool. 101 ways to become more peaceful. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here today. And then also just Mission Joy is a great website. I think, Charle, you talked about like cultivating joy. I saw that at the very end, and I think that's so important when we think about maybe that reframe. I was paying attention because, of course, I love language and communication and that idea of like, how can we reframe self-care? And that cultivating joy might be a great way to do that. So check out Mission Joy as well. Um, this slide is here very purposefully, just as a reminder that sometimes the best thing we can do is just take a moment, just take like 30 seconds to breathe. I find myself counting a lot when I'm stressed, when I'm overwhelmed. Just stop and count and remember to breathe. This might actually make some people more anxious though, because they're like, oh, it's a weed. You're spreading the weeds, right? With a dandelion. But hopefully that's not what we're thinking about. We're thinking about like, how can we breathe with intention? We're obviously breathing because we're alive. So we're breathing. But are we doing that with intention? Are we slowing down? Are we making our exhales longer than our inhales, which is going to trigger your parasympathetic nervous system? So the little things that we can do to just take a pause, and I'll be referencing a couple of those in a little bit. Symptoms of stress, we probably don't need this slide because we all probably recognize it within ourselves, but really thinking about how we can pay attention to what our stress signals are. And Sherry, thank you for that. Yeah, working on ways to improve stress at work. Yeah, it is really tough to do that with others if we're not doing that ourselves, right? Like it's the whole metaphor. And every time I fly, I think about it. Like you got to put on the oxygen mask first. And you really do. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, then you're not going to be able to give to other people from that full cup, right? Or from that fully oxygenated person. So we have to figure out what ours are. So here are just some examples of where we might see some symptoms of stress. And sometimes that's just this is something really important when we talk about self-care. Sometimes we use things like running away from work responsibilities, maybe getting on social media as a way to avoid the stressful situations. So sometimes those times that we're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to go do this and I'm not being productive. That's your body telling you that that's what you need right now, right? So when we feel ourselves running away from work responsibilities, it's a chance for us to tune into that and say, okay, what do I need? Right? What do I need? What do I need right now? I want to talk about the difference between stress and burnout, though, because there are some really key differences, and it's very important to understand them. And if stress is not managed the way that it needs to be, it will turn into burnout. So let's talk about those differences. Stress is loss of energy, usually takes a physical toll. I know typically when I was teaching a lot more classes and whenever we had a break, the moment we had a break, I would get sick. I'm like, what the heck? What is going on here? This is my break time. Well, I would get sick because I was just maximizing my body, right? My output. And so it took a physical toll. And so nobody wants to spend their free time sick. So what can we do to make sure we're checking in so that we don't have that physical toll happening? So burnout is disengagement. It's not just like I'm checked out for this week or this little bit of time. It's disengagement over the long haul. And we could do a whole session on engagement alone because I do a lot of work on what engagement looks like compared to disengagement. I'll just tell you that people who are disengaged are not, here's a quick metaphor for engagement. Engaged people we're all in a boat together, and engaged people are help rowing that boat forward. They're moving that boat forward. People who are not very engaged are not helping, but they're not hurting. Maybe they're taking selfies on the boat, right? Or they're just kind of looking at the scenery. But people who are actively disengaged, those are the folks who are actually drilling a hole in the boat, trying to sabotage the rest of the journey. So we need to be careful that doesn't become who we are, and making sure that we're paying attention to if we feel this like real loss of motivation, and it really takes an emotional toll. So you can have stress without burnout, but you cannot have burnout without stress. Stress accumulated when we don't complete the stress cycle enough in our bodies can become burnout. So I see, Rachel, thank you for the great stuff you've been adding to the chat this whole time, because I was noticing that before. It's just awesome to see your engagement there. Yeah, it is important in autistic burnout and understanding that in our students and ourselves. Absolutely. Um, so here are some symptoms of burnout and the World Health Organization definition. Burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress. Workplace stress. Okay, this isn't necessarily home life stress, although that can add to burnout. But this is that chronic stress that doesn't get managed. And so what happens is we feel these things: depletion or exhaustion, mental distance, reduced personal efficacy. So it's hard. Like Todd did such a great session. It's hard to give like that though if we're in a state of burnout. And again, yeah, what about our societies leading to so many people burning out? We're not completing stress cycles. So if I could give you some awesome resources as well on burnout, there's a really great book by the Nagoski sisters on, it's called Burnout. And a lot of the research shows that what happens is we go back to that fight, flight, or freeze that was talked about earlier. And we don't have, like typically in the way we're living right now, we don't close the stress cycle. So we just keep going. We just keep going. And typically, our bodies need a physical manifestation to get that loop closed. And we sit at our computers and we sit at our, like in our classrooms, and we just stay where we are, right? We don't have a physical way to do that. So we hear a lot about exercise. This is not a session on exercise, but I would strongly encourage you to find some physical way that you can get that out. It doesn't have to be exercise. It could be dancing. It could be just walking, right? It doesn't have to be like a cardio workout, but some way for us to close those stress cycles is very important. So what are some of the things that are currently contributing to your stress or potentially leading to burnout? Dwight just asked that question. What about our society is leading to so many people feeling that way? So let's hear a little bit from you. Okay, and yes, so the stress cycle, Charlie, if you're able to answer that there with Dwight, that would be awesome. Because I know, because you said stress cycle is important to know about. So hopefully you can give a little bit more information there. Yes, so we have got to figure out how we release that. So we'll wait. I can see some of you are typing. So I'll wait and just see. I love, by the way, this is my little, I don't get any kickback from AHA slides, and there is a fee for it. It is pretty nominal though, compared to other resources that you can utilize. And it is European. So they're always changing things with it. But one thing I love about it is that I am extroverted. And so this helps me think about the introverts, right? How people can engage differently without having to be like your name's not attached to it. When you do a poll, it's not attached to it. So yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I was meeting with a faculty member earlier today, and we were talking about, like she said, I'm just so tired and it's week 7 of the semester and I'm never this tired at this point. And I said, well, what's the background noise, right? What's going on in your life that's like in the background that you're not paying attention to maybe? It's not conscious. And so then we talked a bit about the elections, and this is in Indiana. I do live in Kentucky near Cincinnati, but I do work in Indiana, and they have a pretty big gubernatorial election this year. So, which impacts us as educators, definitely. And then we have we'll have a new president at Ivy Tech next summer. So all of that impacts, whether we're aware of it or not. The anxiety I feel thinking about my students. Yeah, gosh, all of what we bring home, right? Thinking about others. Yeah, crying can absolutely be a great way to close the stress cycle, Charlie. Thanks for yes, yes. Love those tips on closing the stress cycle. Poor parenting. Yeah, like, gosh darn, if we could all just be everybody's parent, right? Wouldn't that be so helpful? No, well, it wouldn't really be, but it's tough. It's really tough. Lack of support at work, home life, financial stress, more put on our plate at school, but nothing taking off. Yeah. It's, and this is the thing, we could probably share a lot of those stressors. We have to be mindful of them. But this session isn't necessarily about understanding what's causing that as much as it is closing that stress cycle and then thinking about what we can do for our own self-care and taking a step, right? Taking a step. So, oh gosh, Brandy, yeah, I can't even. I mean, I have chosen to live my life as though when it's meant to be, it will be that I'm not here anymore, right? Because it's so overwhelming. That's something else we could talk a lot about, what we can control and what we can't, right? because we spend a ton of time stressing about things that we can't even control. And I love what Todd just shared before, because I am rooted in faith. And so I think about how many times in the Bible it says, worry over nothing, worry over nothing. And yet, what do? We keep worrying. So how we could just, if we could just let it go, right? Life is so much simpler. I've been doing a lot of work myself recently on just quieting my mind and being in silence, because I'm not really good at that. And I have a couple things that have happened to me lately that I can tell it's working, because normally I would have gotten real worked up about them. And I'm like, whatever, can't control it, doesn't bother me. So this is that link that Charlie shared earlier to the self-care assessment. And I would love for you to take that. It does say it's an inventory quiz. I hate that it's called a quiz. It's actually just an assessment, just to kind of see where are you right now in your own self-care journey. So here's my question for you. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you with your self-care focus? And I'll talk a little bit more just in a few slides about what the definition of self-care actually is. Yeah, Brandy. Oh my gosh. I have a bracelet that says, with God, all things are possible. But I love that, be still and know that I'm God. Yeah. Like, just, we all have to find what grounds us, right? And so talking about faith is important to me, but it's also equally important for me to recognize that it's not that way for everybody. And so if faith isn't where you're grounded, what is, right? Where are you grounded? Wow, we're like, this is not a bell curve, right? We're like really opposite here. So we're like averaging 6. So we're kind of either down toward the end or we're doing really well. And again, and those of you that are on the side of incredible, super proud of you. Take that moment to like really think about those things that you're doing well and keep that up, because we know life is a roller coaster and you're going to have times where it's not so great. And so we've got to plug back into that self-care. Oh, this is fun. Now we have 3 little hills. Oh, thank you, Sarah, for sharing that resource, an app called Pause, and you do it twice a day. I love that. Oh my gosh. That is amazing. I'm gonna have to definitely look into that. I'm writing that down. Pause. Um, yeah, it is so, so important to pause. I love this acronym that is WAIT, WAIT. And I learned that in an emotional intelligence session. And that stands for, why am I triggered? So instead of responding to something, if we could just wait and ask ourselves, like, what's going on here, right? A little self-check. That's really helpful. So self-care is not, I mean, we think about all these cliche things, right? Most people think about bubble baths, like, okay, I'm going to do a bubble bath or a massage. And you know what? Some people hate taking baths, and some people do not like massage. They do not like to be touched. And so that's not what self-care is. It is an understanding of what you need in your life, right? And so somebody else's self-care is not going to be yours. Some people love to journal, some people don't. Some people love animals, some people don't, right? So absolutely thinking about what it is for you. Where do you find restoration? That's what I think the best way to answer what self-care is for you is like, where do you find that you are restored? Okay, it's not just like, it's not an escape from real life, that last thing here. It is being able to figure out that moment that you can do something else and then come back and you feel like that was helpful. I needed that, right? And so I see some other great things in the chat. What steps help you the most with calming and closing your stress cycle? Okay. Yeah, crying. I love crying in the shower sometimes. Like, just let it out. If it feels it needs to be out, then I'm going to let it out. Going for a walk, love being in nature. Oh my gosh, this is so good. I love all these things that you're sharing. And then Sarah's given us more about the Pause app. So thank you for all of those resources. Okay. I saw this and it just resonated with me. And I was like, this needs to be shared. If you don't make time for your wellness, you will be forced to make time for your illness. So that is everything about self-care, right? That we think about it as selfish. It's not selfish. It's being able to be there fully. And if you don't do that, again, you're going to have to make time for your illness. I love thinking about the things we can do preventatively instead of having to, like, I had allergies situation recently, and my husband's like, when are you going to go to the doctor? And I was like, how about never on this one? Because I know what's going on. I know my body. I can tell that I don't need anything else. It's just my body needs time to work itself out to deal with this allergy, right? Or allergens, and we'll be fine. And I was. but it's important to know that and check in because we definitely need the doctor sometimes as well. Okay, so don't hear me say that we don't need to go to the doctor. So here are a couple things that I thought were pretty helpful. And I love this idea of like, 5 minutes or less versus an hour or less versus more than an hour. Like how much time do I have, right, for the self-care? And what do I need right now? And then this little image for educators that we need to think about, what maybe it is just positive self-talk. Maybe it's an affirmation, but maybe it's a book just for you. Oh my gosh, don't even get me started on that. I love books. I love book clubs. That might be another addiction that I have. So if you haven't shared with us yet, and I know I'm coming up at the end of time, but please share in the chat here, where you can always unmute as well and talk about what you have to share with us about self-care. What else you do? Like, do you do some of these things? Is there something else that you do that we don't have here? Tell us about that. Okay, who's giving away a book, Charlie?
Yeah, so Dr. Julie Hassan is next, and she's also a professor. She wrote a book called Pause, Ponder, and Persist, and she'll talk all about that. And she's got a giveaway, so you'll
Oh my gosh,
love her.
that's amazing. Okay, what that's going to be a like. I know you were very intentional about the lineup with the speakers, but dang, you really nailed it there.
Mhm.
Okay. Oh my gosh, take myself on dates.
I
Yeah,
saw that. That was great.
I love that.
Mhm.
I follow Jen Hatmaker. It's one of the book clubs I'm in, and she goes on a me trip every summer, and it's like a couple weeks, and I just think that's so cool. That's an area of great improvement in my life over the past couple years. I go on a walk almost every night, trying to do yoga. Good for you. Don't make the every night though a barrier, right? Just do yoga when you can do yoga. And if you miss it one night, okay, you weren't meant to do it that night. Spend time with family, listening to music. Oh my gosh, music is so good. RZR writing. I don't know what RZR is, but a razor? Razor. Is that what I think that's what it is? Anyway, that sounds cool. Turtling myself up in my bed alone. Oh my gosh. This is fun to see all these yearly girls trip with college friends. You all, this is fantastic. So here's the thing. If you weren't thinking about, oh, cooking adventures, oh my gosh. Yeah, don't be too hard on yourself, right? That's the opposite of self-care. Like if, another thing I say to people often, because again, language is something I'm very thoughtful about. If we could just eliminate the word should in our vocabulary, but we can't say we should eliminate should because there's like the problem with that, right? But if we could stop shoulding on ourselves and anyone else, that would be fantastic. So don't should on yourself or anyone. It doesn't set yourself up for success. And if you think about it, when somebody else says what you should have done, right, that's not helpful. I didn't do it. So uh, if we can eliminate that, awesome. Yes. Oh, I'm just loving all these things you all are sharing. This is so great. We could just curate a list of all of these pieces here. So, like this acronym for master stress, and feel free to screenshot any of these things. That's the other thing I like about AHA Slides is maybe you have it on your phone, and I just like to take screenshots there. So, mastering stress, thinking about some other things that you can do. Yeah, love the Bible time, spending time in the Word, amazing. I use an app called Glorify every morning. So that is really good for me because I don't have to think about what I'm going to read in the Bible. It just gives me a little passage and then tells me all about it, which is very helpful. So I mentioned this and I just want to talk about that we need to think about these different aspects of ourselves in terms of thinking through self-care. So we think a lot about maybe social or physical, but like where can we also develop our career? How could we maybe help our self-care by getting more involved in our communities? And then even financial. I know we don't love that one. That's my least favorite one. But daggone, we are so much better to ourselves when we do think about that. So thinking about these 5 areas. And then of course, emotional is just the overall encompassing piece here that's not specifically stated in a bucket, but just a different resource. So really think about building a self-care plan. We've started to think through it. So that's really the whole focus of this topic here is just what do you need, right? Assess your needs. Consider what those stressors are. That WAIT acronym is really helpful for that. That's how we find our stressors. We get triggered. We're like, okay, there's something there. Emotions are great, right? They're very informative. So we don't have to respond to them. but we definitely can learn from what our emotions are telling us. So thinking of our strategies for self-care, planning for those challenges, right? Like we don't get yoga in that night. Okay, that's all right. And then taking those small steps and also scheduling time to focus on your needs. So what is one next step you're going to take for your own self-care is where I will leave you with the final question here. And just looking back to the chat because you all are sharing some awesome things. Something you might think about as educators. I don't know, this is like maybe some vulnerability, but I love doing a playlist in my classes. So of course I teach college. It's a little different. But could you ask students what their favorite songs are and then pull together a playlist? It kind of goes back to what Todd was talking about personalizing things. And then could we have a song from every person? And then you could play that music maybe while students are working on things. Of course, we've got to think about, making sure that it's music that can be that can be played, right, in the classes, but definitely looking into doing a playlist. I see Abby, I hope I'm saying that right. Abby said she loves creating, he, they, loves creating a playlist for students. So that's amazing. Okay, you all, thank you so much for your engagement. I am going to pause here, walking with the podcast. Love that. Reach out to others, share the joy. Yes. Yeah, 5 minutes for me just to sit with my eyes closed for myself. Amazing. Okay.